Okay, so this one is about isolating a color to create sort of a hand tint effect, as if we had started with a black and white image, but came across and masked it and colored it in. And for it, you'll want some kind of high resolution image. Ours is a couple thousand pixels here, and you want something with a strong, obvious foreground object that has kind of a bold color in order to be able to make this procedural method work. So we're going to actually isolate the color and use a couple of adjustment layers to affect a much more complicated thing. We'll be able to do it with simple image math, just the color itself doing the work for us here. So I'm going to leave my background intact as a single layer, and we're going to use a series of what are called adjustment layers here. And this is a non-destructive filter of sorts that, depending on how you stack these up, will have different effects as well. But each one of these has a different sort of approach. So we start with this formula by working on the saturation of the object we want to keep. Now, the controls suddenly appear here, and you can see that it's created an adjustment layer, which affects everything underneath it, and then a mask, which would allow us to mask out specific areas if there was something that we wanted to keep, for example, the logo on here, or maybe this flaming eyeball guy up there. And then the controls for it are up here. As you see, if we start wheeling things through here, we can change sort of everything all together, but we're going to go with a slightly different reason to do this here. Now, fairly new to Photoshop is this slider, which allows you to click directly in the image to sort of center in on a specific color range that you're working with. So the idea on this first one is we zoom in on our image with a Command plus or Control plus on the PC side, is to, while that tool is selected, come on in here and you can see that as I'm doing this, I've found my cyans. It's very easy to go too far. You see what's happening down over here. It's starting to get a little chunky, so you might back that off a bit. And I'm sort of tuning it up. If you turn that on and off with the filter button here, you can see it's definitely pushing it. And I can see some spotting occurring in there, so I'm going to just back that off just a little bit. That spotting is coming in because the reflections in here and the compression of the image are conspiring to bring out some of the worst in the picture here. Okay, so it doesn't seem to do much, but it will pay off as we add our next filter, which is a black and white filter. Now, upon selection, it throws the whole thing to black and white, and it's kind of interesting to see what the actual values of these things are and how it kind of, like, these are of a similar value, and the grass seems a little bit brighter and things like that. But we're going to use this not as a normal overlay mode, but as a darken overlay mode. And what you can see happening is everything is taken on kind of an antique vibe, but all of our color's not completely gone. We still have the sort of yellow and green in the grass there. A couple of little red things that we need to take care of. So here again, we'll use the same method to grab our slider and just get right in these areas, and I'm pulling to the left with my mouse, and that's desaturating, in this case, the yellows. And we can see another little setup here of these orange or red suits back there, or out of there. Let's flip that on and off and see the effect. See, it's also taken some color out of my cyan. So while I have that same tool selected, I'm going to raise that up, and it's really fun. We've got a slider here where we can really push that wildly. There's a couple of little artifacts popping up. These greens here. Let's see if we can get those out of there too. Well, they're partially made out of cyan, it looks like, but got them out with a little bit of hassle. So that's a procedural approach for that. As you can see that as I drag those greens out to get the trash can out, I'm also kind of impacting some stuff on the front of the car here. I wonder what a little cyan push will do. Yeah, that's definitely in the cyan. So there's some artifacts from maybe pushing that too far. You can see that again in the reflection of the grass through here. But if we look back at our original, that's kind of baked in there pretty good. So that's not a big surprise. I wonder if we can actually get it out at this stage. So for that, we'll select the adjustment layers control there, which brings this up. We'll highlight the specific area and see if we can get, yeah, it's real sensitive there. Maybe that's about as far as we can get. I'd say that looks pretty nice. Now let's say the idea was to isolate this car, but not to necessarily lose that logo. In that case, we're going to actually use the mask here. I'll just do a little polygonal selection here. We're going to leave it off of the chrome because the chrome is fine. Close that selection with a double click. And then we'll actually fill the mask area here with black, which will get our color back for that. So that looks pretty neat. And there you have it. That's a pretty saturated soloed car there. Now if we wanted to do some more things to help isolate that, this isn't really photographed very well. It's kind of, you know, up against a not very interesting background, but we could try to get a little bit more of a focus on it by doing something like a levels or curves. I'll start with curves here because I think I'll be able to do a little bit more fine tuning. So again, here's our sort of within the image selector, and as I click and drag on a specific area, we're going to see it start to find that point on curves. Curves is a way of representing the brightness of the image here, where black is over here and white is over here, and our control for the black and white is here, our midtones and our white values here. Just real quick, if I turn the whites down, you can see that the whites get pinched thusly. If I raise the blacks up, they get washed out. If I push the blacks in this way, they get crunchier. If I push the whites in this way, they get a little blown out. But I'm going to go back one step here. By clicking in the image, we're saying, all right, this particular spot where I've dropped my cursor in the grass is right at that point on the curves. And if I try to darken that by lowering it, I'll start to put the emphasis on the car. Likewise, same thing here. Maybe I can raise that up. So here we have it with and without the curves, where it really puts the focus on the car.